I'm filming in my very, very cluttered garage because I'm fixing the cat yard, and I need to do two videos today because yesterday was packed, and when I was ready to do a video I was so tired that I thought it would be better if I waited or I just produced something awful, more awful than usual. Woo! So this one is actually for yesterday. I'll do the one for day later, the one for 2 days later. Um, but the one for yesterday is still kind of in the field of not quite subgenres of fantasy, but still topics that define the kind of fantasy you make. And if you know ahead of time about this, then you can shape your fantasy to something you want before you even start making it. The question is hard or soft magic, and this is something you can find far better videos about online, because it's something that a lot of writing advice people, writing advisors, I guess, like to talk about, because it's an interesting it's an interesting topic, and it has both depth and impact on what you do. To put it very bluntly, soft magic is magic that you just make up to fit your needs, while hard magic is magic that has a very rigid rule system to it. If you ever sit around with your fantasy story and think, okay, does this guy have enough, I don't know, strength, jewels, spirit powder, blood intensity, or whatever left to cast a spell, then you're probably stepping into the hard magic area. You can have very, very hard magic, and you can have slightly hard magic, and you can have softish magic, and you can have very soft magic. Very soft magic is usually the domain of children's stories and old school fairy tales, where magic was just something that some strange magical beings or the old weirdo in the big house outside town knew, and you don't have to explain anything about it, so they can just do whatever you want them to do. There is no worry that this could be balancing to the story or the world that it takes place in. There is no worry about the logic behind it, or how they have the strength for it, or why they don't use it all the time. If it's someone who can predict the future, it's just someone that at some point in the story can predict the future for something. You don't worry about why this person doesn't use it to their own advantage, or why nobody is trying to capture them for some greater scheme or plan. And you definitely don't worry about how they can see the future, what happens if they predict something and someone makes sure that it doesn't happen. You don't ask those questions. It's a story gimmick. They can predict some thing about the future that has some kind of role to play in the story, and that's it. And the same can go for some mage who knows combat magic and can fire off fireballs or stuff like that, and then suddenly can't anymore, and just explains, oh, I'm no longer in the graces of my god, or something like that. There is no logic to it, there is no system to it, there are no rules. They are like the powers of Superman, they are whatever you need them to be. They are the sonic screwdriver. They are whatever you want them to be at a certain point in the storyline. Those are the very soft ones. The slightly soft ones have hints of a rule system behind them, hints of restrictions. You may figure out that, yeah, the sorcerer can only use his sorcerer's magic within a certain distance from his evil lair, or that the healer can only heal people that she wants to heal deep down, or something like that. It's usually not something made up to make it seem more rigid or logical. It's usually something that fleshes out a part of the magic, the world, or the story. Like the healer, why can she only heal someone she likes? It's just like that, but it does influence the story. That means that she cannot be forced into healing someone against her will. And if someone got healed by her, you know that there is some kind of connection, or at least some kind of positive reaction between them. So they're not actually rules, but they are restrictions that fit into the narrative. They are restrictions that flesh out part of the story and or the world. As we move more into the hard magics, we start dealing with magic as, to some extent, a science. Can the magic user throw a lightning bolt? No, because there's too much iron nearby and it will conduct it. Can the mind reader read someone's mind? Well, there are a set of requirements that have to be met. Um, like, I don't know, the victim being docile and the mind reader doing certain things. There might be a ritual, and most likely there is a kind of measure of how much magic they can use, or at least how powerful magics they can use. Maybe you have to be a certain level or kind of magic user to use certain spells. So you know that if you encounter someone who uses those spells, they're apparently capable of it. And if you encounter someone that doesn't have whatever it takes, then it's not just going to happen just because the story needs it. The rules are still kind of fluid. They can shift and move and change, but not by much. There is still a logic behind it. There's probably some kind of idea where magic comes from, some kind of explanation, even if that explanation is incomplete or in some cases wrong. That's just a matter of those who use it not knowing it into every little detail. The same as with advanced sciences today. But even if they don't know every little bit about it, they know that there is a system, and likely so do others who have encountered magic. Magic doesn't just do whatever you need it to do. Everybody has certain abilities they can do with magic. Maybe those abilities are defined ahead of time so that the story doesn't just say that, oh, he could do this all along. We didn't know, we never asked, but he could do this all along. Um, but then we go into the really hard magics, and that's where you can practically consider it a kind of technology that needs to be charged, needs to be used under the right conditions, needs the right ingredients, needs the right skills, and most likely everyone who uses magic is in some way defined so that it's clear what kind of magic they can use. And this could turn into bean counting. Some role playing games, both on computer and on pen and paper, are very good at this because they are, in the end, games defined by rules. So there are mana points or energy charges or mental stability or whatever. Sanity points is one of my favorites, um, that are used to power magic. It doesn't have to be exactly like that. It might as well be the ability to attract the right spirits or something. But there are rules about how the magic has to be fueled and how much it has to be fueled and how much can be done. There are likely very clear caps on what a magic user can do with magic. Are you this strong with magic, then you can do this much, no more. Or at least if you do more, then you'll hurt yourself or bring risk to those around you or whatever. Consequences may be part of this, just like using a gun makes a sound. Using certain kinds of magic could leave behind certain kind of traces, and there will be rules for those too. And these rules will go beyond what the story needs. These rules will define the magic very clearly and will probably guide or at least influence the story. If there comes a point in the story where it takes a certain kind of magic and the ones who use magic don't have that kind of magic, then it's not just going to come out of thin air, because magic has to abide by the rules. What those rules are is a huge field, um, of possibilities. I'm not going to go into those here. But the degree to which rules exist and the role that the rules play will define how a fantasy story using magic ends up being told. And that's whether it's low magic or high magic, low fantasy or high fantasy. The way magic works on a storytelling level, whether it's soft magic or hard magic or whatever it is in between, will influence how the story goes. And that goes in both directions, really, because one example of a problem with soft magic, the benefits of soft magic is that if you're telling a story, then you will always have the magic that you need. If you've written yourself into a corner, you can just magic it away. Woo! But other than sometimes coming off as a cheap gimmick, the problem with soft magic is also that it's often not very coherent. If you have heroes that got out of a jam with only the skin of the teeth, barely surviving, and later on your magic user uses a spell that could have solved that problem because, oh, it's soft magic, it can do whatever I need, and right now I just need this to be over with quickly. Then there might be questions about why that wasn't used before. One of the classics is that if a powerful wizard can just resurrect someone, why didn't the heroes bring the dead body of their fallen comrade back from the fight in town so that their fallen comrade could be healed? Of course, or sorry, resurrected, probably healed afterwards. Of course, that was for the story to have some kind of pathos, some kind of emotional impact. The hero dying in a blaze of glory. but it makes no sense if that hero could be resurrected, that the hero dies, Blaze of Glory or not. And very often that is something that comes later because the soft magic is not structured. You do not know in advance what can be done. So when some magic, magical solution, in the sense that it's hard to find another word for it. If some wondrous solution can solve a certain kind of problem, then why doesn't it always solve that kind of problem? And soft magic can very easily write itself into a corner that way after it's been used too much and it has done too much. Even if it's a low fantasy setting where the magic is very basic, very simple, if you can push little things around with it, why don't you just poke someone in the eye from a few yards away and bother them like that? Why has no one figured that out? If you can turn a wooden coin into a silver coin for a few minutes, why hasn't the economy crashed by magic users using that trick all the time, over and over again? Maybe it was written into the story as just like a little trick, something that was meant to outsmart some annoying character or amaze some kids or other childish characters. But if you can make a silver coin, even for just a few minutes, why not just make a bunch of them and spend them and get the hell out of Dodge before they turn back? How is the world prepared to deal with that? If it even is, it likely isn't, because this is another example of some little thing written in just to be part of the story, but it unbalances everything because it could be logically used for a lot of other things. And if you have hard magic, then you don't have these little things popping up all the time. On the other hand, even if you have hard magic, if those things can be done, there should be some kind of response from the world. Hard magic can have silver coins made from wood as well. The type of magic system you have doesn't define the type of magic you can have. You can have hard magic or soft magic that turns wood into silver. You can have hard magic or soft magic that resurrects someone. But with soft magic, it tends to come out of the blue and without any greater thought. With hard magic, you have to explain it in advance and it has to fit into a system. But that system has to take into account many of the things that would surprise those using soft magic. So if you can make silver coins, even with a hard magic system, just knowing that you can do it isn't enough. You have to know what the consequences are in the world for it. But hard magic plans ahead and structures and has rules for magic. Soft magic does not. So soft magic has a very different kind of problems that it runs into. Figuring that out in advance is usually a good idea. In fact, if you do not figure this out in advance, usually you have very soft magic by default. If you don't plan out how your magic works, it's usually soft magic by default.